Hello everyone, and welcome to this new edition of the Uno Tuesday live streaming. So every week I'm taking a look at a few Uno issues and whatever has been whatever is being developed in Uno, and trying to show what it is to be to work inside of Uno and how to use Uno. And if you have questions, of course, drop by and let me know what you think. So today I'm going to be taking a look at a few issues. So actually two issues. The first one would be a translation animation, scalar animations that are failing at compile time, and the second one is the Null support for xBind expressions. So those two are issues that are actually quite small, but we're going to take a look at how to fix them inside of Uno. So hey, xBind. So the question is, what's the difference? What's the whitespace policy for push file in Uno template? It should be I think spaces, if I remember correctly. We can actually go take a look at the file that is at the top. The problem, so it's tabs, actually. It's tabs. The problem is that in some cases, the editor is not enforcing that, so it may do weird things when applying the indentation. So if you can't use tabs, otherwise, sometimes it doesn't make sense. So yes, that's the idea. So maybe you're talking about the project template files. If you're so when creating a project template, that one is using, I don't recall, I think it's using tabs as well. So yeah, it's something to change. So let's take a look at the issue. So let's take a look at the first one. So the first one is the ability to use xnull inside of a xbind expression like this. So you should be able to use xbind and then do let's say this is a date, and then you should be able to do toString with quotes and then xnull at the end, and that one would be the culture parameter, because it has a default. So it's something that is used in some cases. I think it was used in XAML controls gallery. So that is something that that can be fixed. So let's go take a look at this. So last week I tried to use the test templates, and it didn't work quite well. So we'll see if this week Visual Studio is cooperating a little bit more. So to do this, we open the Uno solution, and then we're going to use the cross-targeting override props file and go to the test, the Uno UI test project. So the solution filter for the tests, which avoids to load all the files. Then we're going to open that solution specifically. So yeah, if it's in the project templates, we can use all tabs for now, unless there's something that Visual Studio is doing to change the white spaces at some point, but I don't recall exactly. Okay, so let's go take a look at what we have here. I think so. We got something else before. Hello, Gutsenko. Thank you for joining. We're taking a look at xload, xbind, and the xnull expression that we can put inside of an expression when doing some xbinds. So inside of Uno, there's that solution here. We can go to data, and there's a set of xbind tests here that are available. They're testing all sorts of things, either one by one or as a collation of multiple. So let's say if you're trying to test for that one specifically, for instance, you're going to see, we're testing just that xbind with the string field here. There's nothing additional there. Now, what we want to do is add the test specifically for that scenario and validate that it works properly. So we're just going to be adding that new file. So let's try to find out if there's an xnull already. There's probably not, but you try to find out if in that specific project there is, because it may be supported for something else. Yeah, so it's supported for the XAML markup reader. So if you put xnull as an explicit property for a data context, for instance, then it's going to set the xnull directly, so it allows to override the inheritance of the data context property. But it's not the same context here. We're talking about the data context and just the XAML reader itself that's setting the property. What we want to do is have that inside of an xBind. So let's try this. So we're going to just copy that one. And so I'm not doing it here because for some reason, so I'm actually going to show you. So if you do this directly from Visual Studio here, it will behave incorrectly because it's going to modify a few things where it shouldn't because it's modified from there. So let's see if I do binding and xnull. If I do this, then the file is added properly. Well, it's actually not added correctly. So you can see here that it's done that way. And there's a good reason for that. It's because it's a net standard, it's a net 461 project and doesn't know about XAML files. So there's a globbing pattern that's added somewhere here. And the problem is that when we add the file manually like this, then Visual Studio is a bit lost when doing this. So it tries to add that somewhere else. And we're going to try to find that one out. So yeah, it's doing it here. So it's adding, so if we take a look at the diff. So it's removed from none and then added the up-to-date checks, which we can remove the other one as well. It's probably not used as well. So it's adding a few properties that shouldn't be there. And then removing that one. So if we save that file, then it's going to behave a little bit better. So you can see here that it's now collapsing and using the hierarchy properly. Hey, Abderrahman. Thanks for joining. So we're using the xnull here. And so we can remove most of those things here. They're probably not that useful for the test, actually. So let's remove that. We can leave the X class that's needed and the xBind. So it's expected here that the IntelliSense is completely lost because it's not a type of project that that Visual Studio understands properly, but that's fine. So now we're going to make just a simple property that is of type datetime for now. And I'm going to call it, well, the same name as the other one. Published date, I think. And we're going to return a stable date. So you're asking if I compile all that XAML inside my head? No, no, it wouldn't fit. It's not that big. But yeah, it's so I'm trying to figure all those things out, and that's where the tests are very useful. I mean, we've caught so many issues. Kind of had the confidence of making some deep changes inside of the runtime or the generator, and we know that it's gonna be caught up at some point by the tests. So yeah. So let's pick up the line that we want to change. So we want to have that one. So it was just published, not published date. So let's remove the date here. And we're going to bind a text block. We need to give it a name so we can use it from the test behind. Let's call it TB01. We're going to change its visibility so we can actually get it from the code behind. Otherwise, it's internal, so it won't be readable. And then we're going to put the expression just right here. So we need to set it as xBind. And that's it. So just doing it like this should be enough. And it should compile. So let's try to see if it compiles just for starters. So the piece of code that manages this, okay, so the same issue is still coming back. So this is an issue that's coming from 16.10 or something. 16.10 has been released as part of the update, and there's that issue that says that the build you have it just the build started and then there's nothing that happens afterwards. And last week, I shown that issue. I think it was 2 weeks ago. I shown that issue during the stream, and the developer at Microsoft that was asking how to reproduce that issue just had a demo of that during the stream. So I could just send him the link to the YouTube video of that specific bug. So the fix for this is, unfortunately, you close Visual Studio, and then you go to details and try to find things that are located in the folder of Visual Studio. So in there's generally one that's related to, let me see, there's .NET here. Not sure if it's that one. So there's the program files, Visual Studio. There was one there. Okay, so there's that Visual Studio that should not be there. So there's no Visual Studio running for me here, but it's still running. And there's a perf Watson 2 that shouldn't be there as well. So I hope that the dev that has been asking questions about it is going to be able to fix it, because it's quite annoying. I don't know exactly how that happens, but sorry for the question. My friend tells me right now that you speak French. Ben oui, je parle français effectivement. Je suis de France, mais j'habite au Québec en ce moment. So we can continue. With that. So let's open the unit tests again. So where are you listening from, Abderrahman? And so this is that solution. So let's try to build again and see if that works better. So Microsoft has been asking about that specific toolbox here or pop-up here, asking if it's useful. I don't find it particularly useful. It's saying that there's something that runs in the background, so I generally ignore it by default. But wondering, do you use that specific feature? Good. Nice to see that people are listening from France. So we're getting to build. So to take a look at what happens here. So I think I commented on the issue originally for the xBind support, saying that the support for this is actually located in a file that's called xBind Parser. So let's go and open that file. So for that one, we're doing lots of things in there and try to rewrite a few of the expressions. And there are a few things that are done before calling that method, especially in the rewrite, to transform the expressions that are coming from the XAML and providing that to Roslyn so that it can be rewritten in the right way. So let's see, I think I have somewhere a function that is called prepare or something like that. Let's see. There's a parse property, there's a replace, so there's that. Okay, so maybe it was there already. So let's see. So there's xnull here. That replaces xnull to null, but maybe it's still missing something. So there was xtrue, xfalse, but there's the ability to specify xnull with braces. and it doesn't seem like it's working somehow. So one of the things that we can validate is, does it work in an actual UWP application? So we're going to create one just to validate that it's the case. So we're going to create just a sample application using the Uno template so that we have all the targets that we can test with. And if that happens to be the case that it fixes it, we can actually test in the original application. So does Uno, I don't know if I installed Uno in that one. Let's see. Yes, it is. Okay. Null test. Okay, so did the build work? So the build failed. And the build failed, so you have to scroll up a little bit. That's something that we're going to have to remove at some point. It's not particularly useful. And it says name cannot begin with this. Okay, so that's probably just a syntax error. So let's take a look at this. Yes, we're missing the ending of text block here. So let's rebuild this. Okay, so in xnull test, we're going to be doing the same thing we were doing in the application to validate that in UWP it does what it's supposed to do. So we're going to take the code from that sample here. And the same in the code behind. I'm going to give it to UWP and see if that works properly. Okay, so UWP accepted it. So this means that it works properly. So if we run the app, we can see that it should be showing January 1st. Okay, so it shows just month and day. Okay, so that's good. Now that means that we can go and pick up something else. Okay, so in our case, the xnull binding is generating something that is incorrect. So you can see here that it's not interpreting the null properly. It's trying to figure out that t context becomes null, which doesn't make sense. So we can try to figure out what the translation is doing here. And that's something that we can do inside of tests. So this is this is a parser test, and we can do this from here. So there's another set of tests that we can provide. We can provide explicit support for things like, taking the context here and testing the parser that takes what comes from the XAML and translate it into something that C# can understand. So that's the base of the idea. So we're going to add just one more. So that would be, let's say, function call. Probably do something like that. So my function, and we say just null like this. And it should be null. So if we remove all this first and have just that one, we're going to see where we end up. So let's see what that test is doing what it's supposed to do. So what happens then is that the context is just appended in front of the null, which makes it incorrect. And for some reason, so in this case, it does work. So maybe there's something else that we haven't seen. So it's not the same. So maybe, so it appends context null in front. Okay, so we're probably missing something different there. let's use as a second parameter. So maybe it's caused by that. Let's see. So if it doesn't work, then we're gonna have to debug the generators to find out the actual context of the input of that function that function. So we're invoking the xbind expression parser rewrite method, and if the method is not the right one, then the input is not the right one, we're not going to get the right results. So let's see if adding a second parameter is doing something. No, it passes. Okay, so it doesn't work. So we're going to have to try to find out what's the input of the rewriter there. So one of the things that we can do first is just change the rewriter and write the input inside of the generated code so that we don't have to debug the generator here. So that makes it easier to work with, to start with actually. So let's do this. So there's call raw function, and so it's rewrite namespaces. We're going to put that somewhere in there. So it's not a two-way, it's not a bind back. So we have default bind mode here. So we're going to try to find the same thing as we have here. Default bind mode one time. Okay, so we can put it here. So let's add it here. So it's gonna output the raw function here directly into the generated code. So when we rebuild, the generators are going to get rebuilt, and then we're going to be seeing in the generated code, just in there, we're going to see the input of the generator, so we can get the expression that's provided as part of the rest here. So it's a bit deep, but gives a good idea of how to debug that kind of issue. Okay, so it still failed, which is good. Now we can go and see what we have there. So the input is looking like this. So that is very interesting. So we have two problems here. The problem is the first, that we have that it is added at the top in the front, so that's a problem. But that could be that we're rewriting the function, we're rewriting the text, the original text. So that's probably why. Yeah, we're reassigning it. So that's not the right one. So we're rewriting here, and it's rewritten again here. So we're gonna have to store that somewhere. Okay, so let's try it again. And this time we'll see what happens. Okay. So we're trying to figure it out. So one of the interesting thing about this parser is that it has to know the semantic model of the expression that's being passed in. And it has to know when, let's say, you're passing null, and it finds the identifier null, if that identifier is something that needs to be interpreted or not. And in that case, it's something that is not behaving properly, and that raw that static member here is basically trying to determine is it a static method, is it a static properties, is it static fields, is it enum, things like that. And then because of this, then we're adjusting what the compiler is doing, or what the generator is rewriting, so that it fits from the xbind syntax down to the C# syntax. So now let's see what we have here. Okay, so what we can find is that the original one, so the expression looks like this. It looks like published toString, and then the braces are there, which makes sense because the rewriter, the code is rewriting parts of it here at the top. So we're rewriting x null to null, which makes sense. But the interesting thing is that here true and false are also valid. So that would mean that for some reason we can actually put x null like this, which is also valid. So we may have to do something specific for this. Let's see. So xnull is supported as well. So you can put xnull with braces or with braces and without braces. It's likely to be the case with same thing with true, I would assume. True, xtrue was not found. Okay, so that's not the same thing. And xtrue is not accepted. Okay, so it's only there's x null with the braces and x null without the braces. So we need to support both. Okay, so that would be a simpler test to make. Then that means that there's nothing to make here. So because the conditionals are made properly. So what we need to change is here. Also replace that with null. So both are valid. So I would think that one is a kind of a SAML conversion directly, and that one would be an xBind conversion. That's interesting. So both are valid. Okay. So now we can see if when we're building it works properly. And it should. Because now we have the proper expression. So it looks a bit better because now it's translating it properly. So once we're done with this, if it works properly, no, it's still not good. So what do we see? What's done there? Okay, so it's still not good. So what we have now is still, I put it the wrong way. Because if I do this, then x null is replaced in there, so it becomes just null. So it's not the right thing. So that's why it has to be inverted. Okay. So once we're done with this, then we can create a test specifically for this. So what we want to test out is, can we actually call a method that has a null as a parameter? And instead of calling published a toString, we're going to be, so we can validate that one, saying that it builds properly. But we're going to pass in also and determine that we're building the right thing. So we can see now that the generation was done properly, and that when we're getting to the actual invocation of the published toString, we can see that null is now provided as the parameter. So that's good. Now let's write a test for that one specifically. So we're going to make a second text box here, and we're going to make a method for which we can pass in, let's say, those toString. So we're going to call a method that's called my method, which takes a string and an object, for instance. So just a method that's there. And we're going to store those as fields. We create properties. We can read those from the test. And we're good. Okay, so now we can go in the bindings test file. So we can add a new one at the end. So just duplicated that one. And you can do some assertions afterwards, but that's the idea. Okay, so we have binding x null instead. We're gonna make a test for both. We're gonna make a test for the first x null with the braces and the second one without the braces. So with textbooks 2, and we're gonna make a textbook 3 without the braces. So now we can read the text box, so it is not null. And then we're going to read the values there directly. So what we want is the text to look like specifically Jan 1, and we're running as invariant culture. So that's not gonna be variant across systems. And what we need is tv1.text, and we're going to do the same thing for the others. So getting the value. So that text box 2, it actually needs to return something, the my method. So we're going to have to make it return something. Actually, I made properties, but it's not useful. So we're just going to be, because we're setting the result of the binding to a string. So let's to the string of the text box. So let's convert that directly. So it's my string plus some space, and we're going to be doing param. If it's null, it's going to look like this. So it will be my string, a space, and null. So the string was mmd and plus null at the end. Text box 2 needs to have like this. Same thing for text box 3. We should be good to go now. So let's see if it's better than last week, because last week the tests were not running because Visual Studio was behaving. So maybe, hopefully this time it'll work. It worked with the others, so maybe it will work better with this one. Okay, it failed. Okay, so that's good somehow. Oh, 3M, that's why. So 3Ms, and the tests are running, which is good. That was not working at all last week, so this is a lot better this time. Okay, so we get a green now. So with the green, we're good. So that means that our test is going great. So we tested that we can use we tested that we can use xnull instead of a call like this. We're testing it when calling a method and ensuring that we have the right value, because toString doesn't give us the right way to do so. And then we're testing both signatures with the braces and without the braces. Good. So the first one is done. That's the first issue. So let's make a small branch for that one. Xnull xBind. And for now, that will do. So I think we can remove what we changed in the generator here. Oh, okay. Let's try again. Yep. I don't think we need that one, so I'll make sure that it's not there yet. Okay. So that is the first one. So let's take a look at the second issue. So the second issue is from ZipSwitch, and that one is about the use of implicit animations. So that one, I do not know exactly where that comes from. Ah, that comes from the toolkit. Okay, so that's why. Okay, so let's go take a look at what those are. So if we take a look at animations in the Windows Community Toolkit, we have Implicit Animation Set, and that one can be set on some controls. And it allows to change some properties, and there's probably something that needs to be done there with regards to some of the properties, like this one, for instance. So there's a need for converting from a string to that property. So we're going to go find out what the type of that property is. So if we go to the GitHub of the Windows Community Toolkit, we'll try to find out where that one comes from. So let's see, translation animation. And in there we have, so it's an implicit animation of string and vector 3. Okay, so that would be, so let's see. Implicit animation T key, T value, T key frame. And we have actually something below animation. Okay, so let's go to see if there's animation there. Animation, no, not that one. Implicit animation set, no, not that one either. Animation TQ frame T value, so it's probably located close to it. Ah, there it is. Okay. So we have animation, and then it uses a property. Okay, so that's likely that the value and the keyframe for the type are of a specific types. So that means that there's a conversion that's possible between vector 3 and its string counterpart, and it looks like we don't have it yet. So we're going to add that. Try to figure out. Hey, Abdallah. I'm not sure about that warning specifically. Yes, it's failed. It's good. I didn't see the message. Yes, when it fails, it's good. It means that that we have caught something up at some point. I'm not sure what that what the error that you which error you see, Dallas. So if you can provide a shorter a longer error message, that would help, because I don't know what which one that is. Okay, so what we want to do is try to get something that allows us to transform a string over to its vector 3 counterpart. So that means that there's something that that UWP is doing that we're not doing. So what we can test is use something that Visual Studio has. Yeah, Visual Studio, that WinUI has, which is the markup helper, if I remember correctly. It's a markup helper. I remember the name exactly. So there's not in Uno. We're going to try to find that one is in here. Where's binding helper? No, not that one. So let's try to find that one out. I don't remember the name by heart, so we're going to try to find that one. So win code. So it's not binding, it's XAML binding helper. So I would have thought that that one would have been picked up automatically, but it was not. So the point of that one is to be able to perform translation from one type to another. So if we have a string and then we want to convert it to something else. So let's say I have a type of vector 3. I'm going to try to find out if the runtime does it by default, and if not, then it would mean that there's something else that is added somewhere that we don't support. So let's say we do, I think it was, yeah, let's take that one and see if we have a value out of this. So let's see. So Abdallah is saying that it's most likely a build authoring error. The subsequent import will be ignored. For which target is it? Is it for iOS, Android, WebAssembly, Linux, something else? Okay, so it fails. So that's interesting. So the parameter is incorrect. So the value cannot be converted from type vector to type vector 3. So UWP does not support that by default. So that means that there's something else that that the community toolkit is doing that we're not supporting properly. So let's dig a bit more into that one specifically, because there's probably something that we're missing. Okay, so let's go back to implicit animation. I'm going to try to find again where that comes from. It's a project in class library from Uno. Okay, let's go take a look. So we're gonna make one. Okay, so I'm in that project, and I'm creating a project. So let's see, Uno and cross-platform library. And then we're building that one. Is that correct? Is that what you're doing? Let's see if we have an additional error. Okay, so I'm assuming that's the one that you're talking about. That one at the top. Okay, so this is likely a build authoring error, subsequent import will be ignored. Okay, so it's likely to be because of the MS Build SDK extras. So let's see. And I'm probably going to be updating that one because I think Claire Novotny has been updating that one. So this is the line that needs to be changed. So MS Build Extras here. I'm going to search for that. And in MS Build Extras, there's a newer version. So we're at 3023. So we're going to change that. We're going to put 3. 0, I'm going to say 23, 23. So let's do this. So there's going to be a bit of restoring stuff that's going to happen in the background. And let's see if we rebuild this, what happens. Do we have more messages or not? No more messages. So there you go. So that is one good fix that you can make. So if you want to make a PR, if you know where that is in the templates, if you want to make a PR, Abdallah, you're very welcome. You know, I can actually show you where that is. It's so if you go to Uno platform here, if you search for templates, actually let's not look at templates. So we're going to go to sources, solution template, and then we had a Uno solution template or an Uno library template. So in the Uno library template, you're going to see that there's a CSBrush file, and in that file, or sorry, not that one. So that's the other one. You get the Uno library template, cross-targeted template, and that one is using 2054. So you can change that and set it to the version that's available here. So 3023. So if you don't want to do it, that's fine. I'll do it later today. But if you wanna contribute to Uno, you can just change that line, and that should do it. Okay, so let's go back to searching in the community toolkit where we're having those conversions happening. So we're looking for a property that's called from. So there's the from property here. So there's a raise animation property here. Animation property changed. So it's not doing much. Is the property used somewhere? So we're using from here. So from get parsed values. That one is interesting. Ah, see? Okay, so that makes sense. So you get a we got a vector 3 animation with conversions in it. So we get to and from, and there's a to vector 3. Okay, so the vector 2 to vector 3, not particularly useful. Okay, so there's a to vector 3 with string. Okay. So what is interesting here is that the property here is, it seems to be generic, and because it's generic, it probably messes up with the source generation. So what we're trying to find is, actually, where is that property defined? So it's probably in a file close to it, or maybe it's defined below. But it's actually a dependency property. So if it's a dependency property, it has to be an animation. So we're going to find that file for animation. Oh, it's probably that one. That one. So is there a from? Yeah, there's a from. So that is interesting because the property is of the proper type. But for some reason, UWP is handling it well. There's probably some conversion somewhere that's happening that we're not doing right. So let's try to figure out what Windows is doing. Because there's some translation happening somewhere that translate that value to the proper one. Maybe there's some registration somewhere that's available in there that we're not supporting. Let's see. Is there some vector 3 something that we're doing? There's vector 3 animation, vector 3 node. So that one is not the right one. Expression nodes. how do I add Microsoft? Abdallah is asking, how do I add Microsoft UI XAML controls to the project class library from Uno? Well, it's there already. So unless you're talking about the one that's coming from UWP, in that case, you'll need to add it conditionally. So if you add it that way using the package manager, that's not going to work because it's going to be present for all targets. So let's say we add it manually, and if you try to add it manually, it's going to fail most likely. Microsoft.ui.xaml. So if you do this, then if you try to add the project, so let's add 2.5 for instance, it's likely to fail because it's not going to work for all targets. Let's see if that worked. Oh, it did work. Okay, so the problem is that if you do this, then afterwards the build will fail. So if I build that way, you'll see that the project added is going to behave very incorrectly, likely. So let's see what that does. Yeah, okay, so it tells you that the NuGet package requires target platform version that doesn't exist. So the way to fix this is to basically do this and use a condition. So you're gonna make the item group here conditional to a specific target. So for instance, what we want here is that we want the Microsoft UI XAML package to be only available on UAP. So we're going to take the target framework here. So we're going to say this item group and package reference that is inside, we're going to be using it only when the target framework being built is UAP, that one. So the same one that you're going to find here at the top. So when you're building this again, so it fails some more. Let's see if we do this again. Maybe the restore didn't happen properly. So when you're changing targets like this, you have to actually rebuild, otherwise it will do funky things. Okay, so so for some reason it's still using that package, probably because it didn't restore the target properly. So if congestion is the right one, let's see. So maybe Visual Studio is behaving somehow. Let's see. Just gonna unload the project and reload it to see if it's not a caching issue. That may be. Well, that's another one. Let's see. It says system global namespace is not the right one. So we probably need to add another package then. So that means that there's a dependency that's provided by this that's not there. So let's add it. So, and when you're in a UWP project, there's an additional reference that's added here. It's that one, the Universal Platform project. So we can just add that one and using the same version 6.2.11, and you can upgrade it afterwards if you want. It just has to match between the two. So let's see if that fares better. So we have to upgrade. Oh, that's probably why. Because the so now it has to go and bump up to 1862. So we're going to bump up that one as well. So we have to bump up at the two locations, here and here. So let's let it rebuild and restore. We're going to see here that it's going to restore a little bit. Okay. Still not happy with me. Microsoft its current project is okay. It's still not restoring properly. We're gonna unload again. still not building properly for the other one. So those ones are building properly, which is good, but that one is not happy because it's still saying that we're using 1773. This is 763. Oh yeah, I forgot about. Oh, so that's another thing. The Visual Studio is behaving that way sometimes. So when you edit the file, it doesn't pick up the changes. So if it does something weird, just unload the project, reload the project, edit it again, and make sure that the target frameworks are the right ones. So we're going to change that by default. That doesn't make sense that that item group is staying at that number. I'm going to bump up both that one and that one so it fits with the one that's coming from the other. So you can see here that now it built properly. So it made a bit too many, it required a bit too many changes. So that is something that we can change directly in the sample in the template directly. So we don't have, so you don't have to do it by yourself. So we're gonna change that that number as well there. So keep a note for that one. And so we can do this properly. Okay. So that's how to create a class library. It's too complex. That means that the default template is not the right one. So we're going to adjust that so you don't need to do that. So probably in Uno 3.8, it's going to be there. So let's go back to trying to find out why our conversion is not happening properly. So maybe there's something else that's being done somewhere in the code of the community toolkit that enables conversions that I didn't see. So there are ways to provide conversions, automatic conversions for types. So maybe that is the one that that we're seeing here that's supposed to behave properly and isn't. So we get strings extensions. We get vector 3 here. Get the OL inside of the code. Get an animation builder. Get constants here, no conversion here. Frame animation builder again. Okay, so it's not converted here. There's probably some magic somewhere, and the llama probably knows about it. Okay, so what we could do is try to repro this directly inside of the community toolkit. Probably try to do that. I don't know if I have it here. Maybe. No, I don't have the community toolkit, so we're going to clone that. Nope, not in a code space. So we're going to clone the community toolkit and try to find out where that comes from. Because I don't know at all. So there are ways to have some types being converted from one to another. I don't recall if it's something that needs to be placed directly on the property or if it's something that needs to be defined globally. So we're going to try to find this out directly in the code of the community toolkit. So we wanted to find animations. Animation. So get the animation builder. Get the animation. No. Oh, there it is, animation. So that's the first one. There's animation here. There's an easing mode. And the property for this is defined. So there's a from and to. So that's the base of the animation, but there's one that is animation with frame t key value t keyframe. And what we're trying to find is that one. So that one is typed somehow with the vector 3, but should be converted somehow to a value that makes sense, which is something that Uno can understand. So I'll try to build the application and see if we can find something there. So there's a sample application here that we can build, and we're gonna see if we can break into this and see. So I think there's probably a sample that does that. So in the sample pages, there's probably animations here. And maybe it's called implicit animations. Implicit animations there. So not the sample page, because that's not the right one. So we need to find the bind method here. So that one is a string here, provided here. And we're going to try to see when we open that specific sample, if the translation from the string to the vector 3 is done either locally inside of the Uno, the community toolkit, or if somehow there's something that is registered in UWP that makes this work somehow. Live tile page is not supported. Okay. Well, that doesn't work. We're gonna have to push it out. That's interesting. Is this it's main? It's the main branch. It doesn't build properly. Type with a full name is not supported. Let's go back to a branch that was published. So we're going to use let's see. Let's use 702 instead of main. And maybe there were some changes that were made that are not compatible with the Visual Studio that I'm using for some reason. So let's try again. So so F12 here is not going to do anything. That was really translation animation. So it's implicit animation, and then it goes down to all the properties that are available there. So that means that there's probably a conversion somewhere that is happening. Or maybe it's that one, get animation, but something else is happening. So how to read a resource dictionary file contained in a class library from, what do you mean read? Do you want to use the values that are specified there? Because we have a sample that does that. So if you take a look at Uno samples, because reading is not something that you want to do explicitly. Most of the time you want to use the resource dictionary. So in Uno samples here, you can find one that is called control library. And in that control library, there's a library with a theme inside. So you get a generic.xaml, and the generic.xaml is a resource dictionary, and that one is automatically applied to the control that's called my templated control. So that means that when you create a template control inside of the application somewhere else, that style is automatically used when creating the type. Here's invite. Thanks for joining. So, okay, so the app built. So probably something that was broken somewhere on the latest master. So 702 is good enough for what we're trying to do here. So if you want to find out, there's a Zamalama that's who's doing some interesting debugging of the community toolkit. So you can follow him on his Twitch stream. So on animations, we've got implicit animations. So that's the implicit animation here. Okay, so the interesting thing here is that when I change the content of that file, of that text here, it's going to be reparsing the content. So if I put a breakpoint here and I change, let's say this, for instance, to 100, we get a string. So that is interesting. Why do we get a string? So maybe, so it's string to vector 3. Okay, so there's the conversion that's done here. Okay, so that kind of makes sense. So the type of t-value is not what I expected. So the type of the animation is string vector 3. So maybe that explains somehow string vector 3. Okay, so the property is of type string and it's converted automatically to vector 3. Okay, so that means that the value has to be converted somewhere using this, I would guess. Okay, so the from is 100, which is the value that I passed in. And the parsing should be happening here. So it's trying to parse the to and the from. So 2 vector 3 length. Then we're parsing it here as a set of values. Okay, so that should work. So that means that in Uno, we're missing something. We're missing something because the conversion should happen properly. That means that the error message that we're getting from the original issue is something that is different. So it's not that one. I've lost the link. So let's copy that link from here. Okay, so the issue says that processing file enable convert from translation X to the target. So that's something else. So it's definitely not. So the from here should be so it's just only because it's a nullable string. That could be the case. Let's see. So I thought originally it was just because of the type conversion, but it may not be completely the case. It would be that because t-value is a string, then the conversion from string to nullable string is not supported properly. So that would be something. Okay, that's interesting. So that we can do, that we can work with. Okay, so let's see. We probably make a test there directly inside of the generator somewhere. So we're going to make a simple control. We're going to try to create the conversion directly inside of the one. So Abdallah is saying generate.xaml link to app control library share. No, you don't need to link it. It's just it's available. It's available automatically. It's available ambiently, so you can get. See, it's not referenced inside of CS proj file here. It's just automatically picked up when you make a control. Sorry, when you make a control library. So I missed that one. So when you make a control library, the file here is automatically picked up and is used by the rest. So you don't need to reference it explicitly. It's going to be available automatically. So unless I'm misunderstanding what you're trying to do, but that's the idea behind this. Okay, so now what we're trying to do is create a small project here. So we're going to make a different file. We're going to call it global string convert. And in that one, we're going to be adding just a another control that that takes in just a nullable string in its definition. So let's make, so we can remove all this because it's not useful. And we make a control, and we're going to make it a let's make it framework element for now. That's just going to do, and then a dependency property. I'm going to make it a string nullable. So it's when nullable string convert control. So in here is going to be null. So in here we have to enable nullable. So let's do this at the top. And we're going to see what happens there. So when we're done with that control, we can reference it from the XAML here. So it's in the local namespace, not defined, which is not defined. So we're going to define that one as well. And we have my nullable string here, which can say hello. And we need to add the local namespace. Local namespace, which is that one. Okay, so let's try to build this. So it should fail the same way that it fails in the other way. Trying to understand that the original property that we got, it's actually not a conversion issue. It's not a runtime issue with implicit conversion. It's not a type conversion per se. It's just the generated code is incorrect because it's trying to do something with a type that is not of the right, that has a different nullability. So let's see. So we have another problem here. It's probably related to the other issue there. Okay, so we have it here. So unable to convert hello from nullable string to type string, unable to convert from one to the other. Okay, so if it says this, it means that the type checking is not behaving correctly because we have a string nullable that comes from a string that's not nullable, obviously, and it fails to find how to convert from one to the other. So that is actually relatively easy to find. So we're gonna search in the whole solution for that specific string, and it's going to find just one XAML file generator. And what happens there is we have all sorts of validations of saying, is the type the same? Is it a string? Is it, if the type is the same, then we just assign the type to its member directly. And then if not, then we have to adjust a few things along the way. So in here we can see that this is the function that takes whatever comes in as a string and at compile time converts it to the proper target type. So that means that even if you're writing it as a string inside of the XAML, we're making our best inside of Uno to try to convert all that directly to the target type, so that there's no parsing to do at runtime. But in that case, it looks like we're doing it incorrectly, or we're not finding the right type, and it's not behaving properly. So what we're going to try to do here is to try to understand, is it a nullable property? And if it is, then we're trying to get the original type symbol. So in that case, sometimes it becomes a bit more complicated to understand where that one comes from. So we're manipulating the semantic model in that case. So trying to determine if the type is the one that we want to have may be a bit complex in that context, because putting a breakpoint here can be challenging. So we can still try, but it may be a bit difficult. That's right. So what we're going to do is break somewhere in there and try to find, try to break here or above, in here, and try to determine, is the property type a string ? And try to see if we can break here. So let's try to do that first. So there's something that we can add in the project here, so that will enable the generator to break automatically. So we can just set a property here, so we can find there's a Uno source generator debugger break. So if you set this in your project, then when the XAML generator will start, it will automatically break at the beginning. It will allow you to attach to it, then and then you can put some breakpoints and understand what happens there. Abdallah, this specific syntax is not yet supported properly. It causes some trouble. It doesn't work properly. So it's something that we still have to work around. So can you open an issue for now, and we'll probably take a look at. There's probably some David Oliver, which is a developer on the Uno platform, that may help you there. I don't recall exactly what we need to do to change that. So we're going to open a new instance of Visual Studio and try to debug that directly. So we want to break. In here. So let's open that file in the other Visual Studio at that line. So it's 4154. So we're going to try to break here, but conditionally, otherwise we're going to get drowned into the notification. So that breaks it. This is not good. So let's see. Do we break properly here? Okay, so name doesn't exist. It's probably something else. I think it's to display string. Let's see. No, it's not to display string, it's something else. I don't recall which one it is, so let's try to find that one out. So name, that's interesting. So name should have been working, but it's not. Why not? Is it because it's null? Could be. Oh, that's not at all what I wanted to do. I was expecting something else, but it's not. So yeah, just to put the strings unequal, that works better. Okay, so let's see if we break at the right location. So is the build, no, the build's still not doing anything. So we're gonna have to detach for that one and reattach again because we probably missed the original break. So we're gonna attach again to the same Visual Studio, and then see if we break properly at the right location. So it's not the right one for some reason. Test, is it still, so it's still not building. So maybe I'm not looking at the right thing. So maybe I need to do to display string instead. Let's see. Property type. Let's see. So we have to rebuild again and attach again. Attaching to source generation host, which was the one that hosts all of it. Okay, it's still not picking it up. So there's probably something else that we need to do. So find the underlying type. Maybe we need to move that one to the next line. Maybe. Because maybe the property type is not the original one, but the one that's defined by the underlying types. It could be that one. Let's try again. Because it's supposed to be string like those. You know, when there's a case like this, it's supposed to say we're having a string of that type, and then it behaves properly. I could just add a string question mark, but that's probably not the right way to do it. So we're going to try to find for the right type. Okay, still not the right one. Okay, so I'm just going to break unconditionally for now and see if we can find something else. Maybe we're not looking at the right thing. Because it's supposed to hit so display string here. So if we do dot name here, got color, object, binding mode. Let's see if there's a string somewhere. Boolean, thickness, string. Okay, so that could be the reason, because the property type when toString is not the right one. That could be. So that's the full name. And when we're generating the error message, we're doing member value, member name with type. Okay, so if I take a look again at the original one, with type string. So this is, the type is coming from property type, and property type is really the one that we're looking at. So it's probably the toString that does that. So if I do it may behave differently. Yeah, so you can see here that the name here is not the right one. So maybe if we can change this to be property type dot toString instead. And we were looking for a string that way. So is it the right one? Okay. Still not picking it up. So it means that we're doing it somewhere else. Unable to convert from one to the other. So maybe we're not going through that one. Let's do something else. I'm going to break here and see what we can find. Because we can move, we should be able to move the pointer up. So let's do this again. So Uno generation host again. Okay, so we're breaking here. So we're breaking with a property type of string, so that's good. So why did we not get the right thing? So we're testing for we're testing for enums, testing for switches. We should have stopped here, but not. It's probably not testing the right thing. So let's move the pointer back here. So it's string quote. For some reason, the break didn't pick it up. The break did not pick it up. So the property type toString didn't do the equal with the string here for some reason. Okay, so let's do it that way then. So if we get here, we're going to try to find out. So we want to have the actual type that's underneath us. So we're getting a string like this. We need the original one. So we get the underlying name symbol. The problem is that toString is behaving differently. So that could be the issue. So maybe we should be using the actual type instead of doing something else. So let's say instead of using property type explicitly, we should be using the underlying name type symbol or something like that. I can see here that it has nullable annotation annotated. We probably could remove that one. So if it's annotated, we could probably make one without the annotation. Though I don't know if in the generator we have that. So let's see if we can find if we have access to this at that location. I'm not sure. Oh, there it is. Is it available? So it's not available in Net 641, but available in Net Standard 2. So we probably, okay, so there's the is nullable, but that one is probably not doing what we want. So there's a with nullable annotation, but that one is probably not available for all targets. We probably should be enabled. So the reason for this is that we're building the generators twice. We're building them for the Uno source generator, and we're building it also for the Roslyn generator is hosted by Roslyn itself. So depending on which environment the generators are run, the Roslyn versions may not be the same. So that's probably why it happens that way. So there's a containing symbol, declared symbol. There's probably a way to get some type that that makes sense. Original definition, maybe. Let's see. We do original definition. Does it help? So we got the debugger behind that's blocking everything. So we can just stop this and try it again. So building this, we'll rebuild the generator again. And no worries, Abdallah. You know, we're doing our best. Let's cancel that for that one and see if the generation happens to behave differently. If it does, we're going to try to find... No, it's still not working. So probably going to have to do something with the original definition or something of some other property that gives us the non-nullable version of it. If not, then we may have to upgrade Roslyn for both targets so that nullable annotations are understood by both versions. But we're not there yet, so we're going to try to figure that one out. So I think that'll be it for today. We made some progress and tried and dug into quite a few things. So I hope you you learned a bunch and that you'll be able to take a look a bit deeper at Uno next time there's something that doesn't work for you. So until next week, have fun developing and developing Uno. Bye.